So the title of this video is Sometimes Your Eyes Can See What Mine Can't. And by the end of the video, you'll understand why. This past Saturday, my wife wanted to take the kids out to like the library and then to this local dinosaur park. And I'd had a really long 2 weeks of work, 12 plus hour days. I was really, really tired. So I had a lot of reasons why I didn't want to go. I just wanted to stay at home and be a homebody. But those weren't the real reasons I didn't want to go out. The real reason is that as some of you know, I struggle with kind of like a generalized anxiety. So I'm really good at performing when I'm able to conceptualize what it is that I have to do, when I can identify the importance of the thing. I can do, I can handle my share of adversity and difficulty and struggle. But when I don't necessarily think that it's essential, or when my mind doesn't conceptualize that, I tend to experience a certain level of anxiety, especially when it's something that I really, really don't want to do. And I know that sounds, it's like, oh, you don't want to do something, and so you don't want to do it. But it's a little bit different, right? So driving in Korea is something that I do every day. I do like 2+ hours of driving a day, 5+ days a week. And so it's something that I'm certainly no stranger to, and it doesn't really cause me a lot of anxiety when I have to drive to work, to and from work. Especially like from work, I get frustrated. I don't want to do it, but I don't get like anxious. But knowing that my family was going to like this dinosaur park, even though I drive in Korea every day, I had this very serious anxiety. Like, I don't want to do that. I really, and my heart rate was going up. And so I told Kaya that I didn't really want to go, and she was fine with that. She's kind of gotten used to, like, on my days off, I just want to chill because I've been go all week long. And she's really understanding, and I really appreciate that. And so she was getting all her stuff together, and in my mind, as she's getting all the kids and the stuff together, I'm having this internal struggle, right? And there are multiple thoughts that come to me, and one is that you don't overcome anxiety by giving into it, and that's clinically proven. The way we overcome anxiety is to face willingly, right? That's key, right? Willingly face the thing that's bringing you anxiety, that's causing the anxiety. I was also experiencing quite a bit of depression. So depression isn't like justified feelings of sadness and grief, right? So those should be separated out. Like when your life's just going crappy, you have absolute justification for being sad, for being angry, for being frustrated, for grieving. It's when like things are going pretty well and you just don't feel good. So when your life is all seemingly in alignment and you still have this grief, this deep sense of I don't know, like nothingness. And I struggle with that. So like things are going pretty well in my life, to be honest. I have a beautiful wife, wonderful children. I have a job that fulfills me like more than I ever imagined or dreamed. My financial needs are pretty well in hand. So I don't have like a lot of reason to be depressed. But it still comes. And I've talked about this before. I've blogged about it. I've shared stories about how it just kind of comes and goes. And so on Saturday, I was dealing with like a double whammy. I was really not feeling good. And all I wanted to do was stay at home and veg. And for me, that means like play video games, watch just mindless videos, TV, sleep. I did not want to go out. And so the initial thought about the anxiety came, like the way that you overcome anxiety is to face your anxiety. And along with the anxiety list was this whole long list of all the reasons why I was justified in staying home. And again, my wife was like supportive of that. Kaya's very good at hearing how I'm doing and listening to that and not judging me for that, and supporting me in that. And so I was very justified in just not going. But something inside of me said, that's not the right thing to do. You need to be with your family. And so I said, no, I'm going to face this anxiety and I'm going to push through this depression and I'm going to go. So I made that decision and I came running out of the bedroom and I was yelling, Kaya, Kaya. And she had just walked out the door and I was like, oh. And then the next internal struggle began. Should I text her and say, hey, I want to come? I wasn't quite ready to go, right? So I needed an additional 5 or 6 minutes to pull all my stuff together. And so it's not like I could race out the door right after her. And we live on the 7th floor. And so by the time I got out the door to like call her after her, she's already going down the elevator, right? So I'm thinking, oh gosh, what do I do now? And so I'm having this internal struggle, and part of me is like, yay, I was gonna make the effort, but then another part of me was like, no, you need to message her. Well, fortunately, I didn't have to think very far because sometimes the universe just aligns, right, and gives us exactly what we need. And she came back in the house or in the apartment because she'd forgotten her phone. She never forgets her phone. And she'd forgotten her phone. And I said, hey, would you be willing to wait for a couple of minutes? I'd love to come. She said, yeah. And she was really excited. Right. And so it didn't start well. Let me tell you, the next step was really, really hard because we get in the car and like the kids, I don't think noticed anything, but Kaya definitely noticed. I'm like combat breathing. Okay. I'm really trying really hard to not show what's going on in my head and in my body, but I'm not doing a very good job of it. And I take them to the library. I go and deal with a couple of things, like at the store, pick up a couple of things while they're in the library. We get all back together, and then we head out into the city. And I am just like all I can really do is focus on the next turn, right? And so I guess this is kind of like my first message is when you are dealing with anxiety and depression, sometimes you're completely justified. And I just want to say that you're completely justified in just staying at home and relaxing. I've done that a number of times. And if that's what you need to do in order to get through whatever it is you're going through, then I'm definitely not gonna sit here and judge you. But sometimes it's not what you need. Sometimes what you need to do is go. And it's at those times especially that you really need to rely on your inner voice. That inner voice was telling me, it was screaming at me, no, you need to go. You need to be with your family today. They need you. Your kids need you. Your wife needs you. These opportunities are fleeting. And not only that, like you need this. You need to go. And it was in conflict with the anxiety and the depression inside of me. And what I had to decide in that moment was which voice was I going to listen to. And I'm so glad that I listened to that inner voice that said you need to go, right? So listen to your inner voice. And if you know that you can go and do something, then do it. Don't give up. Don't give in to to the anxiety, depression voice just because it's there and just because you don't have to all the time. And that was a big victory for me, I felt. And then secondly, when you finally do get up and get out, if you're able to, just pay attention to the next thing, right? I had to get them to the library. I had to go take care of some things at the store. Focus on those little things. Those little things become little victories, and each victory begins to pile up. And then as we're driving to the dinosaur park, I'm following the GPS, and I took a wrong turn. And the anxious part of me wanted to be like, you're such a freaking idiot. How could you miss this turn? I can't believe you, and just tear myself apart. You should just go home, right? But instead, I just forced that down, and I was like, all right, recalculating. So in life, there are going to be times where you take a wrong turn, where you make a mistake, and you want to just absolutely tear yourself down and shred yourself. Just like, what a freaking idiot you are. How could you do this stupid thing? You are so terrible, right? But what's really beautiful about a good GPS program, okay, is that it recalculates. And often it recalculates so quickly and the next turn comes so fast that if you're too busy focusing on where you should have been or where you should have turned or what you should have done, that you're going to miss the next turn too, right? And this is such a life lesson. You're going to miss the next turn. You're not going to get back on track. And then it's stuck in like this constant recalculate, and then you're getting more and more and more lost. The best thing you can do when you get off path, when you get off track, is to focus, to refocus and say, okay, recalculating. Where do I go next? I need to be ready for the next turn. And I think that's such a huge life lesson. When we make mistakes, we need to recalculate. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that we make is we go out in life without a destination in mind. If we just gone out for a drive in the city, that would have been a nightmare. It would have been a nightmare. I would have just been like, where am I going? I don't even know, right? And I wouldn't have had a destination. But because my GPS knew where it was taking us to, okay, it knew the endpoint, it knew where we were going. We had a goal in mind. It was able to recalculate. So if you don't have a clear goal, if you don't have a clear focus on where you want to end up, on where you're going, on where you want to be, then it's going to be really hard to recalculate when you get off track. So that's the next kind of lesson. Have a goal on where you want to go, on where you want to end up, on what you're working towards. Aim high, right? Take upon yourself the burden of existence, of life, and say, no, I'm going to do something with my life. It can seem small to other people, but to you, it's a big deal. But have a goal, have a destination, have somewhere that you're working towards. And when you get there, make another goal, all right? Have another goal beyond that so that you don't just get stuck once you hit something. Because it's not the destination, really, that matters. It's the journey to get there. That's equally, if not more important than where you're aiming. And then when you get off track, just recalculate. Don't spend time in the shame cycle, in self-pity and anger, self-hatred, self-doubt. Don't spend time in that. Just recalculate. Say, all right, I got off track. What do I need to do now? I took a wrong turn. How do I get back to where I was going? Or do I need to set a new destination point? So that's kind of lesson number 2. Or maybe 3. I don't know how many lessons we're in now from Saturday. So we recalculate, we get back on track. We finally get to this dinosaur park, and my kids are loving it. They're having so much fun. And I'm having so much fun just seeing it through their eyes as they're running around. And they've been here before, and they want to show me everything. They're like, Daddy, look at this, and Daddy, look at that. And I'm just loving having them show me around. And we go beyond the dinosaur park, and it turns out that this park is pretty huge, and it becomes a hike. And we get to this point where there's a garden maze, right? And it's not very high. It's taller than my kids, so they can't see over it, right? And it's a pretty simple maze, but I'm taller than it, and so I can see the entire way through the maze, and I can see what turns are right and what turns are wrong. And Simeon's leading, and he's the shortest one, and he's done it before, and so he's like, I know where to go. And so he takes off running through this maze. And he takes some wrong turns, and I'm watching as he's going, and he comes to the dead end, then he retraces his steps, and it was just such a cool experience for me, because I was like, man, I can see the path clearly because I'm at this different vantage point. He can't see the path. And I just thought how symbolic that was. And there are going to be times in life where it feels like life is just this crazy maze and you keep hitting dead ends. Don't be afraid to reach out to someone who might have a different vantage point. We are wildly social creatures, even us introverts. We're extremely social creatures. We need social interaction in order to organize our thoughts and our minds and to get ourselves right, to avoid insanity. Okay? We have to have other people that we work through our problems with, that we walk through the mazes of life with. And there are going to be times where you're just running into a dead end and you keep hitting yourself head in this wall, and you need someone with a different vantage point to kind of help guide you through, and that's okay. Right? That's absolutely okay. So don't feel like you have to navigate this maze alone. So we kept going. We're hitting this hike, and it had been raining at one point, and so the rocks are there are a lot of rocks on the trail, and they're kind of slippery. And I keep telling Simeon, because this kid loves to run off the trail, but there are some pretty sheer downhill drops. Okay, it's not like a sheer canyon style drop, but it's just like a really steep incline, right, with a lot of trees. And he wants to run on the very edge, and I keep telling him, Simeon, stop. You need to stay on the trail. Now, of course, I know my son, and so even though I've been telling him that, I know that he's not necessarily going to listen. So I keep staying really close to him and holding out my hand, right? And I keep reminding him, I'm like, Simeon, if you stray off the trail, you're going to fall and you could get a really big ouchie. He's like, okay, Dad. And he just thinks that I'm kind of lame, and I'm boring. And so he keeps pushing the limit. And sure enough, at one point he sees some rocks that look like, oh, those would be really cool to jump on. And so he goes and he runs and he goes to jump on them, and boom, he starts to fall, and I grab him. And I go, I told you, son. And you could tell that he was really scared. And I said, I told you, son. And he said, I know. I'm sorry, Daddy. And I said, it's okay. You're not in any trouble. All right? I'm just glad I was here to catch you. Please stay on the path. And of course, after that experience, from that point on, he stayed on the path, and he kept looking back at me, and he wanted to hold my hand a lot more, right? He'd had a little scare, and that felt really good, being a dad. And but I just thought, again, that how similar to life that is, that we're all walking on this path, and we're all only ever one decision away from changing our lives forever, and not necessarily for the good. It takes a million good decisions to make a good life. It takes one really terrible decision to completely ruin what could be a really good and beautiful life. Now, we have the ability to get back on the path after we've fallen, but the path that we end up on might be dramatically different than the one that we were on before. And that doesn't mean that one mistake is going to ruin your entire life. The beauty is that we can always course correct. And I believe, being a chaplain, being a Christian, I believe that we have a loving heavenly parent who's kind of there, right? Who is, and when I say kind of there, I mean that he's not going to pick us up every time we fall down. He's not going to grab us every time we make a mistake. In fact, most of the time, in my experience, he's going to let us make our mistakes and fall down the hill. But when we're ready to come back, I believe he's there to help us get back on track. And then there are countless people who want you to succeed. All right. I know that we're kind of in the world of cynicism right now, where it's like nobody loves me and nobody wants to help me. And I just don't think that's necessarily always true. It could be very true that for a large portion of your life, you've been surrounded by people who want to see you fail. And maybe that's your family, maybe that's your friends, but you can always trade them in for new friends, okay? Family goes much deeper than blood. And the people that you surround yourself, that you choose to be in relationship with, they will directly influence the quality of your life. I love the saying, show me your friends and I'll show you who you are. It's so absolutely accurate. And I think that associating with people who really want the best for you is extremely important, right? So surround yourself with good people. And if you're not right now, it's time to do a little exchanging. And it might feel lonely at first. But if you know what your values are, what your core values are, if your values are loyalty and duty, I love the Army values, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage. If those are some of your core values, then you should be associating with people who those are their core values as well. All right. And through that, if you've been off the path, if you have those types of people in your life, then they're going to help bring you back on the path. And so you're not alone, right? You're not alone in your efforts. And there are so many people who want you to succeed. If you're watching this video, then there's one right here. All right. This is never going to go viral. First of all, it's too long. Okay. So the population of people who are actually going to watch to this point is very, very small. Okay, and so if you can hear my voice, if you can see my face, then I am one of those people that you can lean on, that you can rely on, that wants you to succeed. I want you to live a glorious, happy, beautiful life filled with light and joy and success and overcoming. And so if you need to reach out to someone, then don't hesitate to reach out to me, right? Send me a message, send me an email, call me on Facebook, whatever. Okay, I'm here. I'm here to support you. So that was another extremely powerful, profound experience that I had. So as we're coming back, turn around, we're coming back. We come to this really cool rope bridge. So this rope bridge is fully encased. Right, it's really super well designed. It can probably hold thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds, and everyone's kind of going through it at once. I'm bringing up the rear. Kaya had been leading from the front. She's setting the pace, and I'm bringing up the rear to make sure that none of the kids fall behind. And we're going on this rope bridge, and to be fun, I start jumping on this thing. And by the way, there's no way anyone's falling through or falling down or anything like that. It's totally safe. And so I'm jumping up and down, and Kai's like, ah, and the kids are like, ooh, and they start jumping, and they're having such a good time. And at this point, my son says that he wants to be behind me. And I'm like, okay, we're through the hard part of the hike, and so it's not a big deal. And so I let him get behind me. He wants to go last, right? He wants to bring up the rear, and that's kind of like an exciting position for him. It's a position of responsibility. And so I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And so I let him get behind me, and he's still jumping, and we're jumping and we're going, and Kaya and Sophie get off the bridge, and it's still me and him, and we're jumping and we're moving, and I see something. And this thing that I see causes me to stop in my tracks. And Simeon's continuing to jump, and he's laughing. And what I see is an Asian giant hornet. And these are also called murder hornets, right? They're huge. They are huge, okay? They're absolutely huge, and their bite on the pain scale is like put you in the hospital level. And and their venom is not fun. And this thing, and it's been wet outside, right? And this thing is definitely discombobulated, and it is hanging out on a rope that is at exactly the same level that Simeon's little hands would be on. And Simeon is right behind me. And he's still jumping, and this thing is clearly agitated. And so all of this, of course, happens in a matter of seconds, right? And less than 2 or 3 seconds. Everything that I'm describing to you, I see it, I recognize what it is. Simeon's jumping, it's on the same level as his hand, and I yell out pretty loudly, "Simeon, stop!" And he immediately stops just like that. And I reach back and I very sternly, I say, "Give me your hand." And he immediately gives me the hand that would have been on the rope bridge. And I take his hand and I slowly guide him behind me. And I take him off the bridge as quickly as I can. And the hornet flies away. And we get over there, and you can tell by the look on my son's face, he's starting to get a little teary. He's afraid that he's done something wrong. And I kneel down in front of him, and I tell him, "Simeon, I'm so proud of you." And he's like, "Why?" Because, of course, again, he thinks he's in trouble. Now, in his little mind, because of the intensity with which I said his name, with which I told him to stop and demanded his hand, he thinks that maybe because he was jumping that he did something wrong. Now, of course, my son is really, really good at understanding when something is unjust. So he's not just sad, he's angry. All right, because he's already working through, like, you were doing it, why can't I? And I can see that those wheels turning in his head, right? And he's 5 years old, and he already puts these things together. And so he is feeling like what has just happened to him is unjust. And so I kneel down and I said, "I'll tell you why. Simeon, right at the level of your hand, there was an Asian giant hornet." And he goes, and his eyes go really big, and he goes, and I said, "Simeon, the reason I said your name with such intensity and I asked you to give me your hand was because I needed to keep you safe. And I am so proud of you that you didn't argue with me. You didn't say why. You didn't continue to jump. You did exactly what I said. And so I was able to keep you safe. I am so proud of you." And he goes, "Daddy, thank you." And he grabs me in this big bear hug. And I said, "You know what? I'm so proud of you that we're going to go get ice cream now." And he goes, "Yay!" And so they're and then he wraps all that up. Like he steps back and he goes, "Daddy, I guess that sometimes your eyes can see what mine can't see." And that's the moral, I think, the overall moral of this story. Sometimes your eyes can see what mine can't see. I think that it's also really important when someone does something that you want them to do, especially when it's something good that you want them to do, to praise that and to reward that behavior. So that's what we did. We went and got ice cream. So, to recap, there are going to be times when you're feeling really, really anxious or depressed. And sometimes maybe what you need is just some you time, some downtime, but sometimes you don't. And when that inner voice tells you, you need to get out and go and do something, you need to do something, and it's the right thing to do, then do that thing. As you're on the path of life, if you make a mistake, you take a wrong turn, don't beat yourself up. Take the time to recalculate and get back on track. There are going to be times where you're stuck, when you feel like you're at a dead end and you don't know where to go. Find someone to talk to that might have a different vantage point. As you are walking on the trails of life, surround yourself with people who are going to help keep you on the path of virtue. And when you stumble, reach out to them and get back on track. And sometimes there are going to be things that other people see that you can't see, dangers that you aren't aware of. And when someone raises that warning voice, it might be stern. Have the courage and the willingness and the humility to listen, to hold on to that hand, and then reward good behavior. Reward good behavior. There's a good chance that if I hadn't gone, that they wouldn't have even been on that rope bridge at that exact time. But what if they had been? And what if, because Kaya and Sophie had walked right past that thing. What if they had been, and what if Simeon had grabbed it? What if? Anyway, it's my 30+ minute long devotional for you all today. I love you. I'm thankful for the opportunity to talk with you. And I hope that the story benefits you in some way if you've made it this far. Again, if you need someone to walk with you on this journey with a different vantage point, someone to just talk to, then don't hesitate. You're not alone. Thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful week.